Hi, welcome to Metro by T-Mobile.
Hi, my dad is in serious need of an upgrade.
Yeah, my phone's a fossil.
He needs a new phone and a new network stat.
Well, when he switches to Metro, he can get an amazing iPhone 7 with HD Retina display for just $99.99 after ID validation.
Wow, $99.99?
Bye-bye, fossil.
Requires porting of eligible number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. With validation of ID. An independent database limit 4 per account/household. 32 gigabyte model only. See store for details and terms and conditions.
What do you know, Joe? I don't know nothing. What do you know, Joe? I don't
Good
know.
morning, Vikings fans. This is the Morning Joe's Barbershop double.
Oh my!
Dubstep.
I think that could be the first and last time that will ever be done, just like that.
See, the problem with that is now I have that soundbite. For those of you looking for our typical intro song, I'm just testing a theory about some of the whether or not that song, which is off the compilation album Songs That Won Us the War, is restricting some of our uploads or downloads and streams.
We need a song that wins us the Super Bowl. That's what we need.
You know, I think people in 2009, after the Cowboys game, Prince had that song that I cannot find anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And then it kind of went away. Like, no one talked about it after that because they lost a few days later. But that, I thought, could have been a really cool rallying cry to win a Super Bowl and then have that song be like this glorious thing that lived on forever in Vikings fandom. But I would love to find that song.
Oh yeah, I remember he wrote some song for the Vikings, some fight song, and I was at that game. It was just song was just okay. I like Prince.
So do
I think it's great. I think it's great. I didn't feel that song though, but it might be worth finding.
Either. It was something I remember it being like about something with the purple and gold.
Yeah.
But Prince was, as most people my generation learned through the Chappelle Show, was a big sports fan. Loved to play basketball. Played
he's always at
Minneapolis
Central,
I think.
Yeah, he's at Target Center quite often for the Wolves, and I saw him in a booth at more than one Vikings game. So
watching it from like a little matchbox or like he's a little guy is my point.
It's funny. I always he was a big sports fan, and he always was not doing it on purpose. I mean, he just liked sports. So, and I know Bob Dylan, another guy who's from this area that's a pretty good singer and songwriter, is a sports fan as well, but he's more specifically a baseball fan. In fact, I know a guy that sat behind him one time and all of a sudden realized he's at the Metrodome sitting behind Bob Dylan. He says, "Excuse me, are you?" And Dylan interrupts and says, "We're all just Twins fans here, brother." And says, "Okay, I'll leave you alone." And I wanted, if I'd ever meet the guy, big fan, of course. And if I'd ever meet the guy, you'd hate to scare him off with some question about, "Oh God, I love that song," because then he'd go hightailing it. But what I would ask him is if he's a Vikings fan, because I know he's a sports fan. He's really into boxing. He's had plenty of songs about boxing. He's really into baseball. But I'd just be curious if he was a Vikings fan at all. So
he has a song about Hurricane
Carter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I always wondered about that, because I feel like Prince was, and Dylan spent a lot of time down at the U of M and stuff, or some time at the U of M, but he doesn't seem, for him...
He spent a year and a half there, I think, not going to school, but anyway, go ahead.
Greenwich Village, I think a lot.
Yes.
The scene back then in New York. But I don't feel like he feels as connected to maybe Minneapolis, obviously because he's up from like the Iron Range. Or Minnesota as a whole.
Hibbing.
Oh, Hibbing. Well, there you go. But he doesn't. I wonder if he has a house here.
He does. He's got a big ranch out in Hanover. A big big spread out there, and he comes back quite often to it. Yeah, he's still connected to the state, but he's not associated with it like Prince was. Prince was in Minneapolis, and all his fans felt that way. And Dylan's, he's an outstater, just like me, and he's still a Minnesota guy. I mean, he's got songs that Minnesota appears in the lyrics from time to time. But yeah, I think he blasted out of here early in his career, and like I said, he does have a place here as well as one in Malibu and other places. But God, I know way too much about him, so we'll stop.
Yeah, if anything takes the Vikings' place in your heart aside from me, it's got to be Dylan. And like Dylan's never-ending tour, it seems to be like a never-ending trail of heartbreak for these Vikings. That's a segue for you. But on a serious note, in regards to heartbreak, the sports world lost a couple people this week. I do want to also, there's somebody that I was close with who also passed away this week unexpectedly. He was a big fan and supporter of this show and the websites. His name was Casey McDonald, and he was the co-owner of McDonald's Liquor, and he.
I'm sorry to hear that, Joe.
Yeah, that was yeah. We thought he had food poisoning, but he wasn't the type of guy to go to the doctor. It was very sudden, and for anyone that's seen about the Labor Live and all the really cool, increasingly cool amount of Minnesota sports memorabilia, Vikings memorabilia, that all came from Casey. And so I just wanted to shout him out on the show because he, again, was a huge supporter of everything that we do here, and he was a really, really great guy. And,
my condolences, Joel. That's terrible. I met him once, and he's a nice guy, and I obviously very close to you. So I'm sorry. My condolences, and so sad for you in that regard.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a rough week, and I really the Kobe stuff, and especially you for people that don't know, you worked for the Timberwolves back in the day, around the time that Kobe would have been just entering the league, correct?
Yes. Right. I was there back in from 94 to 2000, and Kobe was just coming into the league and becoming a star, and out at the Lakers, and sad thing, 41 years old, for him to die in a helicopter crash, and his daughter to be in tow, and the other 7 people on their way to a basketball game. I can relate to that more than anything, being a basketball coach. I didn't take any helicopters to my kids' games, but it's just tragic. It's one of those things that when someone dies that everybody knows, I think everybody's got their own idea of what that person means to them, and you could just see all the people coming out and talking about him this week. It has not really died down too much. There are people still lamenting his passing, and it's a sad thing, just a tough thing for the league and for sports.
It's a real testament to his impact on people, because like you said, everyone seems to have a story or a connection. Watching everything on TV, Jimmy Fallon was weeping about that, and they had hung out a few times. Shaq broke down yesterday. He just seemed to have a really big impact on everybody. I mean, even across the sports world, and obviously not basketball, but Patrick Mahomes was talking about his work ethic and his approach to the game, and similar. I think he had a similar mindset to that of Michael Jordan, perhaps bordering on obsession, but outworking everyone else in the gym. And I think a lot of people in the football world relate to that. A lot of players do, but he was definitely like the heir of Jordan for the little bit younger generation there. But yeah, it's just that I can't think of anything sports related. People were saying maybe like Dale Earnhardt or something. But I could not believe that when I first heard it. And those helicopters, they're I'm not afraid of flying, but those are one of the things that they're so low to the ground. They're extremely hard to fly. It sounds like they shouldn't have been flying in the first place, and these helicopters aren't. And I bet this will change now, and that could be a positive legacy. But I think that there was a recommendation that helicopters all be fitted with this terrain sensing software that was never really implemented in the government by the NTFB, and I think that we very well may end up seeing it that way. But yeah, for his wife and his other daughters, he was just on. I was just watching an interview of his like a week ago. He was on Jimmy Kimmel talking about somebody had asked him if he ever wanted a son to carry on his legacy, and he's like, my daughter's doing that. My daughters are doing that from a sports perspective. But yeah, wow, what a just gut punch of a thing to have happen. And then the Vikings world and the NFL also lost Chris Doleman, who was one of the first Vikings I remember as a kid. They used to come out with these spooky, around Halloween, like football cards he was one of them, and I forget what his nickname was, but he was dressed up really scary, and for some reason after that I was afraid of him, because I always thought of him that way. But it was a little bit before I was really cognizant of like football as a whole. I just remember him, Randall McDaniel, John Randall, obviously, that whole team, and those defenses I don't think get as much credit. A lot of us don't think of the 90s era as having good defenses, but
that's because of the 70s, and the one they have now kind of overshadow them, I think.
Yeah, and Denny, when he took over, was more offensive minded, obviously, and then as you got through that, into the early 2000s, the defenses, especially under Tice, weren't that good, or they were actually pretty bad. But I think in '98 they had a top 10 defense, but that's because other teams had to become one-dimensional relatively quickly, I think, and that allowed guys like Randall to tee up, not to diminish what they were doing either. But I'm not sure if you had any experiences with.
Well, I never really knew Chris Doleman. I knew him more as a fan because I wasn't covering the team back then, and he was a beast. He was he's kind of one of those forerunners to the guys that would stand up at the line. They were using him at that as a pass rusher at times. He's number 5 all time on sacks and stuff, and in the league, yeah. And he's a Hall of Famer. And I remember. Funniest thing, I didn't know him per se, so I ran into him in the the New York Metropolitan Arts. God, I don't even know what it's called, Museum of the Arts or Metropolitan Museum. I can't remember. He was out there and he was walking around. As I was with my wife, I was out there for a trip, and I also like, that's got to be Chris Doleman. He had a Hall of Fame insignia on his jacket, so I think he was out there at the time that the Super Bowl was there, and he was kind of, there for some festivities. And I thought about going up to him because I was covering the Vikings at the time, but I thought, nah, just leave him alone, let him have his private life. But when he's wearing the Hall of Fame jacket, maybe he does want attention. So I wish now I would have said hi, but he seemed like I thought he was a nice guy, but he was on the field. He was something else. He was feared and just, always consistent. He had one season, I'm looking at his stats in 1989, he had 21 sacks, which is awful darn close to the single season record. So,
what year was the strike shortened year? Was that 88 or 87?
That was 87.
I always think of Rice had that single season touchdown record that year, despite they only played 14 games, which is astounding.
Right. So that's
crazy.
Yeah, too bad. Brain cancer. 58 years old. I'd heard he had it for a while, and he battled it for a while. And it was the strangest thing to see it because, and I read this on Twitter and a feed, and I saw it the other day that Chris Doleman had tweeted out, "I'm 2 years cancer free." I mean, I 2 years removed from, having a brain tumor removed. Just last Saturday, he tweeted that out, and now he's gone. It's like, wow. I don't know if he went downhill quickly or what happened, but it's sad to hear that he's gone, just like all these other guys we're talking about.
Did you hear Deion Sanders come out this week and say that too many guys are getting into the Hall of Fame?
No, I did not.
Oh, yeah. That obviously wasn't on the agenda, but you talking about the Hall of Fame jacket.
Doesn't he like a party? Doesn't he like a bunch of guys?
Maybe he feels like because he was such like a top 1% of 1% guy that he wants it to be more special because he feels like it isn't special enough for him. I know he's obviously very competitive. I've never gotten that sense. I mean, I feel like maybe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, some of the bands that get in there, I'm like, what?
Football's always been compared to baseball, and baseball it's really tough to get a lot of people. They had 2, I think, made it this year, and there have been years in the NFL where they've had less than a handful, not many, but you have to take it from the standpoint is they're bigger rosters, and you got to I think by that very nature you're going to have to get more people in, or else nobody's going to get in. And there's plenty of guys that would still like to get in that are on the border, like Jim Marshall, that probably never will. And so there are some criteria there, but I don't know. I mean, I don't want it to become the Pro Bowl, which I think it's really kind of silly. Where I tweeted out about a week ago after all the Vikings got in there that said it's like Oprah Winfrey handing out Pro Bowl appearances. You get a Pro Bowl appearance. Yeah. You get a Pro Bowl, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want the Hall of Fame to become that. But by the same token, I mean, it's a lot. The league keeps going, and you're going to get more players. There's a lot of good players in the league, and there's a lot of people deserving it, and there's plenty that might deserve it that aren't in yet. So I don't know. I wouldn't. I can see where his point, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
It's a tight. I think it's a little more difficult for the people on the committee that discern like the amounts, not the people that necessarily vote on it. The sports writers that do, but you got to kind of toe the line between making it restrictive enough to make it special, but you don't want to piss off a lot of people. You had like Burt Blylevel for years was really upset about that. A lot of people, like you said, point to Jim Marshall, which maybe he's a victim to having great players around him. But it's a very subjective thing at the end of the day, and so. It's tough, but I can see why Deion would say that, because I'm sure he thinks it's not as special when he compares what he's doing to other people. But let them have their shine. It doesn't, it doesn't take away from anything. It doesn't make anything less special.
Yes. If the Vikings had won a Super Bowl back in the 70s, Marshall would be in. That's all there is to it. Yeah. I think he is in there for I think he's in there for this wrong way run at one point. I'm not sure.
I think it's in. They have that at the Hall of Fame, like the museum. I think they have a picture of that or a video on.
I think so. I thought I saw it when I was there this last fall. So. And I said, "Oh, great! That's where I'm going to find Vikings running the wrong way." Jeez,
God, all these, it's always. I literally stopped watching those top 10 NFL network programs, like top 10 records for this or that. Yeah. For a while there, it was like almost every single one was against the Vikings. It felt like. Speaking of the Pro Bowl, though, or what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, back when they didn't have the good defenses, 99 yards by, what was that Cowboys name that ran? Tony Dorsett, 99 yards, never be beaten. So anyway, go ahead.
And I think they had the longest punt return or kick return, missed field goal kick return, whatever.
Yes.
Speaking of the Pro Bowl, though, a game that's meaningless and that not a lot of people care about. I don't know why I'm surprised, I guess. I thought we might get a little bit of a reprieve from something that I, at this point, understand I'm completely perpetuating and fanning the flames of, so I don't know why I'm complaining about it. Especially because of those sweet clicks that we get for articles like these, which is not why I'm doing it, I swear, on all that's holy. But I do enjoy checking Google Analytics on stuff like this. But I wrote an article about Cousins' Pro Bowl weekend. It was fun to see him, in the skills competition. I think he got first place. And in typical Kirk fashion, I'm not saying he makes excuses, but rather that he tends to be a perfectionist. As he was the first thing he said to the teammates who were high-fiving him was that the 3-point target was stuck, and otherwise he would have gotten more points. But there's some funny memes going around of the people giving a max deal to the blindside barrier that was behind him. They photoshopped the barrier as if it were a person, saying look what Cousins can do with time.
Yes.
And that should have, I guess, given me some idea as to where things were going to go after the actual Pro Bowl, which I wrote an article about, watched the highlights for, but I was not able to watch the actual game. But Cousins' performance, I think the headline was "Further Divides Vikings Fans." He had 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, a interception, and a fumble that was picked up for a pick six, and that sealed the game. And the crux of the article, essentially, to me was the way I left it was, keep in mind, here's the good, here's the bad, but keep in mind it's the Pro Bowl. I don't feel very confident in that argument because it still is what Cousins has shown he does at times, and it's a narrative for a reason, and I understand that. But yeah, yikes, the response from people was just tremendous. As of last night, I think we had 14,000 clicks, which is a lot for us.
Cheapers.
And that's not from, sometimes we get our stuff on Bleacher Report, so we just get a ton of clicks that way, but it seems like people were getting it on our social media, but the conversation just kept going and going and going and going. And so it got elevated that way, which should show you kind of where the Vikings fan base is at this point. And speaking of viral articles, you had an article a few days after the season ended about the reaping and the tribalism of Vikings fandom and people kind of joining whatever blame posse they want or they think aligns with their beliefs as to why the season didn't go the way that they wanted, and basically those different groups cannibalize each other from a fan base perspective. And I think this is a really good example of that. But I don't know if you saw the Pro Bowl at all or got to see any of that. But
I saw one play. Harrison Smith makes an interception, laterals to I can't remember his name, a defensive lineman from the Eagles, and scores a pick six. So I thought that was kind of fun. Harry made a nice interception, and then I went and watched the Gopher basketball team instead. I'm just, I'm kind of over that. When I saw them not even taking people to the ground for tackling,
yeah.
I get, okay, and that's fine. I get it. It's fine. You can do whatever you want. You got to protect your players. I have no problem with it. I'm just not going to watch it, because it took, for me, it just doesn't mean that much to me. And as far as, I'm glad Cousins, threw a couple touchdown passes. So it's nice to see Vikings do stuff. But, that's the way he is right now. Just that polarizing. I walked into Mankato Brewery on Monday for a meeting, and I was immediately accosted by my buddy there who's one of the assistant brewers, and just I've been trying to talk him off the ledge about Cousins for a time, and I had him off there, and he says, now Kirk Cousins will be the first person ever to throw an interception on that kickoff rule that they had instituted for the Pro Bowl or some such thing. And, unfortunately I didn't see it, so I didn't know what to say to him. But I said, okay, well, there is that. But, yeah, he's just a polarizing figure on this team, and until he takes them further than they expect him to, it's going to remain that way.
And it sounds like I thought for sure that Teddy would take over for Breeze after he retires, whenever that is. But it sounds like they are going to be going with Taysom Hill from reports, at least this week. And a lot of people are pointing maybe to Teddy going to Green Bay. I don't know why they think Rodgers would be retiring anytime in the next year or two. But you would think Teddy is ready to start now, so why would he wait even longer than his career? He has to feel antsy about that. But the last thing that I think we need from just that perspective of the fan base is Teddy being available somewhere, because I just still bash my head against the wall saying, what else could we be doing, though? And I get that just because there's no other options doesn't mean you don't pay attention to a player who's bad or you don't look at replacing them. But I still I don't think that Cousins is bad. I think he's extremely polarizing because of that. I think he's shown just flashes of brilliance at times, and it's just some of the things that, I don't know, maybe I feel a little responsible for this, and I'm going to sound like I'm completely this is like a weird defense of him, but I was looking at the end of the year offensive line rankings from a PFF perspective, and the Vikings, I think, were 19th as a unit overall, but they were top 10, nearly top 5 in their run blocking, 27th in pass blocking, and that doesn't excuse the interception that happened against Green Bay or some of the weird other decisions Cousins made, but I feel like because of just the fact that he is Cousins, a lot of the time my focus was, why aren't they getting him out of the pocket more? Why are they doing these shotgun spread stuff, like focusing on game plan and formation and not execution by the offensive line? I think people, because the offensive line has been so bad, that we saw the right side of the line opening these big holes, and what Dalvin Cook was doing, and we just thought, wow, the line's gotten so much better. Still middle of the road, but it's on the upswing. I still see. I mean, I'm seeing articles from our competitors saying things like, well, Riley Reif is, he's got 2 years left, and he's pretty good. He's not great, but he's serviceable, and maybe Elfline's the problem, maybe he isn't, but this line still has issues. Obviously, 27th in the league is no better than what we've been used to these last couple of years, and so I think that not that gives him a pass on anything, but I think not many people focused on the fact that from a pass blocking perspective, this line was complete ass yet again. And
you don't think so? I think a lot of people talked about the line. I mean, that's what they're saying, where the improvements need to be made.
Yeah, but I don't think people realize how bad it was, or that
27 is pretty bad. Yeah, I didn't know that.
A Cousins perspective, it was more either he's garbage, he's bad, he wilts under pressure, he's got happy feet, all true things. Not that he's garbage, but that he's bad under pressure, and also that from the defending Cousins standpoint, well, it's not him, it's the game plan. Why don't they get him out of the pocket? They know that he's bad under pressure. I mean, that's mainly what I saw, and I don't think anyone spent more time analyzing. It's like the Shed from A Beautiful Mind, just Cousins-related arguments all season. And so I think there's
we're going to have to change the name of the show to Cousins Joe's, or Joe's Cousins, or something.
Something like People's Exhibit A on Order of Protection for Kirk Cousins. Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I'm a little, listening to the Tice interview that we had 2 weeks ago, and his thoughts on zone blocking from creating a clean pocket, what improvements can be made. They are tethered to Riley Reif for 2 more years. He's making $13 million and like $13.6 million next year.
Yikes.
$4.4 million in dead cap space, which is a lot less than it was. But when you have the 25th pick, what can you really do there?
Draft correctly.
Where do you fall? I know we've touched on this, but where do you fall on the moving Brian O'Neill to left tackle argument? Because I was 100% against it, and now I'm only like 80% against it.
I'd still like him to stay where he is and see if they can find somebody else that can play left tackle. I don't know if that's possible. If he is in fact your best tackle, which he is, and you're not going to harm his skill set and abilities by moving him, fine, then that's the thing to do. But I don't know. Experience has taught us that doesn't really always work. I mean, they've tried to do that with several around here. They like their versatility in their offensive linemen, and they've moved them around, and that has been detrimental for some of them. Pat Elflein for one.
Yeah.
There was another one that's no longer.
TJ Clemmings.
Yeah, there's another one.
Got moved around a lot. Remmers got moved around. But the difference
Remmers
there
is another one. Yeah, I know there's a difference. I'm just saying if that's the case, if he's the best one, it's not going to. If you're confident that's not going to happen, then you do it. But if you think you're going to deplete his ability and skills, then you keep him where he is. You still got to block people over there. So.
And he's done well over there that it's like, wow, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like, wow, man, if you could do that at left tackle, that'd be tremendous. But
Wolper didn't give him a Pro Bowl and fight for crying out loud.
Yeah, how does that work? But the only because I look at Clemmings, I look at Remmers, I look at Elflein, and they were all moving from tackle to guard or guard to tackle. I think Clemmings did both.
Yeah. They've been premium on guys that are versatile, so they say, but we haven't seen it. That versatility flush out as a great thing. Only when we injured to beat the band, then you need that flexibility. But as far as moving them from position to position and changing everything they do in their foot, I remember talking to the guy from Slippery Rock that we had. I can't remember the guard.
Was it Easton or no?
No.
It was was it
Anyway, I asked him about they moved him from one guard to the other, and he talked to me how it is kind of difficult. You have to change your footwork, and we're all kind of left-handed and right-handed, so we have something, we're probably, I don't know if we're left-footed or right-footed, but we probably are dominant to one side, and it is a change, and you are probably losing something if you're doing that. So I'm not exactly for it.
Was Fusco, wasn't it?
There it is, Brandon Fusco.
Yeah, you're doing everything completely to the opposite,
right?
And when you're reacting, and it just isn't conducive with instinct and reaction when you have to rethink every single thing that you're doing. That's not to say that it's impossible, but yeah, if you can maintain what he's doing, and there's no reason to expect why you couldn't on the right side. I think Klein is only 27 or 28. I could be wrong, but
he had a good season.
He really did. A little worried about his concussions, but Bradbury, a lot of the PFF did like a ranking the rookie classes of each team, and they were down on him all year, and really kind of doubled down on that in their article, talking about how poorly. Underwhelming, I think was the word. I don't think he was terrible, but he wasn't anywhere near the. Oh God, I was so high on that too. I thought, man, this guy. I looked at all the centers taken in the. Not that that's any sort of metric you can rely on, but in the NFL, all the centers in the last 10 years that were taken in the first round were all just amazing. And you think, man, Elflein says he's more comfortable playing guard, and woo, and yeah, no. But obviously the team knows that's a problem. They brought in a new coach. They solidified their coaching staff this week for 2020. They brought in a guy named Phil Rauscher, who has coached a few other places. I think this will be his 5th year as a coach. I think he was the assistant. Let's see, coaching assistant, that's what it was, to Kubiak in Denver. And so there is familiarity there. But he'll be assisting Dennison and company with the offensive line in 2020. We'll talk about Kubiak in a second. We already knew that he was the offensive coordinator before these announcements, though. What was surprising, I guess, wasn't really the who, but the fact that they elevated two different internal guys as the defensive coordinator of the Vikings for 2020. One being Adam Zimmer's son, the other being Andre Patterson, who has had a tremendous career in the NFL. He's 59 years old. He's been around forever. I have a feeling, I don't know. I didn't know how to interpret that. I kind of felt like, maybe Zimmer was savvy enough to know that Patterson had the better resume, and that if he went with his son, which is his right to do, it would just scream nepotism and more of the same, even though both of these guys are internal picks. I don't know what your thoughts were on it. I wrote a whole long spiel about it.
Well, if you did, then you've got more insight than I have. I feel kind of the same way. I don't know what to think about it. I mean, yeah, it's right on the border of nepotism. It's I'm sure he's trying to elevate his kid so that he can have that on his resume, and then when Zimmer does retire, he can maybe forge the rest of his son's career, can forge it for himself. But because I don't see the play calling duties changing at all. I think Zimmer did this just because he's going to, and he's probably, like I said to you on the show a couple weeks ago, who would want the job if you knew you weren't going to be able to call plays. Why?
Yeah.
That I'm not saying that he did this by default because they couldn't find anybody else, but these guys, if they're going to be defensive coordinators and going to continue as position coaches, they don't need to be calling plays. So I guess it makes sense, but it's unique. It's different. It seems like, it's out of the norm from what other people do. And, it's Zimmer's prerogative. I guess I'd like him to be calling the defensive plays. He's the most qualified guy on the team. But, I couldn't tell you. It's a wait and see thing. Are they going to be able to handle? Are they going to improve? What I don't like seeing is Jerry Gray, who was touted as being one of the better secondary coaches, to be let go or not renewed or whatever. Now he ends up in Green Bay, where they have some very talented secondary personnel and may just be missing someone who can get him going in the right direction. So that was kind of a net loss there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I felt like, first I think George Edwards got the short end of the stick. There needed to be change. Blame had to fall somewhere, but clearly, if you're firing your defensive coordinator, Zimmer was calling those plays. And so, again, I don't know. It was hard for me to balance, like, the positive and the negative of being painted into a corner. At this point, Zimmer's in the last year of his contract. They're not going to, with the investment in this defense and the fact that Zimmer's still the head coach, they weren't going to implement very many changes, if any, just new wrinkles on defense. And so you're going to look at, like you said, who can Zimmer find external of the team who can check all those boxes, or who would want to. Not many people, if any. So you knew it was going to be an internal move. Again, I don't necessarily think it was Edwards' fault. I thought maybe he would end up in Cleveland with Stefanski, and Zimmer was almost doing him a favor by letting him go to be a real defensive coordinator to call plays. That didn't end up happening. He's in Dallas now.
The thing is, Joe, in addition, why, if you're being hired as a defensive coordinator somewhere, you're going to want to come in and install your own defense.
Yeah.
And that ain't happening here. Mm-mm. It's just not. So, for so many reasons, this was a no-brainer when you look at it. These guys are going to continue to work with Zimmer, and they know that they've probably just added another title and some different, they'll have some different things to do on game planning days or whatever. But, I think it's going to it's more of a status quo thing than anything else.
Yeah, because at this point, either there's going to be a turnaround this season, or it's the Zimmer experiment is kind of over. And I know that it sounds like I'm threading a needle because I also was for the continuity on offense with Kubiak, but I think that's a different set of circumstances. I think Kubiak wasn't allowed to call plays on Sundays. He did his team, they did a lot of the game planning, the scouting, but that fell on Stefanski. People that
we don't know how much. We don't know how much input he had. I mean, he was on the headphones to him during the games.
Yeah, that's true. But I've been very for the Kubiak.
Yes, you have.
Promotion. I think that if anybody can come in and elevate this offense, learn from why there was a 14-point disconnect between between the games that they won with 30.
He just disagrees with you on Kubiak, Joe. That's all.
Yeah. Well, now then I got to put her down, I guess. But she had a good run. That's they scored 30.3 points a game in the games they won. They scored 17 in the games that they lost. It's that's a very telling statistic. But on the defensive
have the
side,
Vikings. I'm sorry for interrupting. Have the Vikings hired any new coaches? Did they just get one? I mean, there's been a lot of attrition here. It's almost like the Trump White House where, he has all these guys and they leave and he doesn't hire anybody else in the positions.
Yeah, there's just tons of open ambassador jobs and
right.
people overseeing. Yeah, I think Rauscher was new, and then Andrew Janocko, the wide receiver coach, also was new. I know Rauscher also has experience with the Redskins, which is intriguing considering Cousins' time there. Janocko, both one's going into his 5th year, I think one's going into his 6th year. Durante Jones is the other coach, but I think he was promotion. Let's see. But as for Zimmer calling, I think he did say that he was he wouldn't say whether or not he'd call plays in 2020.
Yeah, whatever.
He said it's February. I mean, that's, I guess, different because it was just kind of a assumption that he would call plays each year, season to season, because there wasn't any change like this. But I can't imagine why that would happen. He did say they've been with me for a number of years now in Zimmer and Patterson, so they know how I like the game called. It would take some things off my plate, which would be good. And what other things during the game? It's not like he's calling plays on offense. You know what I mean? Like, is he really into crossword puzzles lately? Like, I don't see that changing much. But we'll see. I mean, I like
management, man. He's got to grind on that for the whole game.
Sitting there staring, sweating profusely,
watching the clock.
It's a rough gig. Yeah, I know I don't sound very enthused.
He parsed it, Joe. He parsed it, so I think he'll continue to do it. He's saying that. He goes, it'd probably be good if that happened. In other words, he hemmed and hawed about it when they would always ask him about Edwards each year. He would do the same thing. So I think he'll continue to call him. Yeah,
I think you're right. And the Kubiak thing wasn't a surprise either. I think a couple weeks ago he called Kubiak the hiring of Kubiak the best thing that had ever happened to him. And so while that's the case, I am encouraged that they are bringing another set of eyes on the offensive line. But at this point, I think it's a personnel thing more than anything. They just need to get some more bodies in there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the next topic, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Just UHHHH ... Well, the Super Bowl's coming up, and you wrote, I love your stuff, you know that. This article, I think, is very quintessential.
Thanks, Joe.
Just the way that you tell stories. And the part I liked about it the most was that you mentioned me.
I knew that. I know how to
how to
get your attention.
You know
just,
what side of your bread is, how does that go? Butter something. You know where your bread is buttered. I think that, while I did worry because you said you kind of understand or feel the pain of me being a placeholder for the entire generation of Vikings fans who had never seen the Vikings in a Super Bowl, I was going to, maybe send you my psychiatrist's info or tell you where to pick up my shopping bag full of scripts from Walgreens.
Well, just we started out. That's kind of been the thing that it defines us a little bit. Is I've been through these 4 Super Bowls, and so I have that knowledge, that experience, and you have not. And I always kind of blew it off as saying, well, you're still a Vikings fan. They had it, but you guys didn't experience it, so you don't know what that was like. But, I kind of talked about how back then, too, in the 70s, the Super Bowl was big, but it's not as big as it is today. And now it is just this massive thing that, the country basically stops for a day.
It's like a holiday.
It absolutely is. And so it is a little different. And I just kind of went over, those feelings, and I worked myself to the point where I had to say, yeah, I agree with you. I understand your pain now. You even now, it's been so long for me since seeing them in the Super Bowl, and I've never seen them in this realm of this massive thing where you got 2 weeks of focus on your team and everybody talking about it. All the stuff I just gloss over now on Twitter because I don't care.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Vikings in that, win or lose. I'd hate to see them lose, of course, because I've seen them lose 4 times. But I would like to see that happen, just to see what that experience is like. And we came so close 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my, would that have been the thing? Of course, then it dawned.
And you would have been there.
Yes, I would have been. It was set up for a. I could have rolled off into the sunset after that, Joe. Had they won the Super Bowl there and said, well, I can't get any bigger than that.
Yep.
Write my story and be done.
I have a weird feeling or fear, and I don't actually think that this would happen, but I almost worry that if the Vikings were to win the Super Bowl, that it would be almost anticlimactic for me, and I would think I have nothing else to look forward to anymore. Like, it just seems like this unattainable thing for me for those reasons. Because they've been in 5 NFC Championship games in my lifetime, 0-5, and so I really can't. I've said this on the show before. I'm a big visualization person. I just can't see it happening. Even it's strange. Even in 2017, I thought rationally they're gonna beat the Eagles. They're playing a backup quarterback. It's gonna happen, but I still was like, I just don't see it though. Like it's just but that's
part of being a Vikings fan.
Yeah, it's a learned thing. But to be honest, I think I would prefer it, at least knowing myself. If I were to have seen, I'm already messed up enough from 5 lost NFC championships. I can't imagine losing 4 Super Bowls in that short period of time.
Well, I don't. It would be maybe because something you look forward to, and it probably wouldn't be quite as big a deal as you thought it would be, because people would immediately start talking about the draft and next year and just say, "Hey, wait, talk about the Vikings." Talk about the Vikings for, but that's the thing. Then you get to start concentrating on the next one and the next one. I mean, you can't win. It's like Phil Mickelson used to say, you could never break through with a major. He goes, I think I'm going to win a bunch, but you can't win a bunch till you win the first one. And once you do, then I think there's some kind of thing that changes cosmically that, the second ones come easier perhaps, or not they don't come easier, but there's something learned or something experience gained that and there's not that pressure anymore that, oh my God, we don't have one, because I'm so you just 0 for 5 in NFC Championship. Oh my God, that's 0 for 9 in these kind of huge games. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I don't remember the first one, but in the 80s, but yeah, I mean, that 98 game really formed my worldview from a football perspective. I was the summer before I went to my freshman year of high school, so it was it was good times. I mean, but like I said to you in I think the comment to your article,
I saw that.
When there aren't, especially Packers fans around, it's almost like we enjoy discussing our mutual or collectively shared heartbreak. Like, where were you? What's your 98 story? What's your 2009 story? We revel in it because we have to. It's like all of us being proud of how cold it is here. The first thing you ask a new person that moved here, how long have you lived here? What do you think of the winter? We pretend that we like it, even though I actually do like it because I am a larger person and I run hot. Anyway, but
I will say that
justifying that crappy situations, I think.
We do have those shared things about stories that we tell about the Twins winning the World Series. I still remember where I was when they won, and I was at a game, one or two games in each series, and I have stories behind them. So I think while you make a good point, we do tell those things. I had it all set up.